Hi there, Thor owners. Today in your 2020 Thor Miramar, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's steering stabilizer. This is what our steering stabilizer looks like when it's installed. It connects to the frame of the vehicle as well as to our tie rod here to help dampen any imperfections on the road. If we hit a pothole and it wants to jerk the wheel to the left or to the right, our dampener here is going to absorb some of that impact, so it's not going to feel it as rough inside of our motorhome. So instead of our motorhome throwing us, we're going to be able to maintain control of it. You're still going to feel the bump, of course, but you're going to feel like you're dominating the road rather than the road dominating you. In addition to there being a shock absorber inside, there's also a coil spring on here, and this will help it return to its neutral position. So this way our steering stabilizer is going to assist you in keeping the wheel straight going down the road. So if you were to turn, again, you hit those potholes, this spring is going to want to pull it back to that neutral position, so it's also going to help assist you keeping it straight. All of this is going to result in you having less fatigue because you're not going to have to work as hard to maintain control of the motorhome. Other scenarios where a steering stabilizer is nice is during heavy crosswinds or when a big old semi drives by and the wind gusses you. You're not going to have all that motion. You're going to keep control. And that's going to not only be easier for you, but as the dampener takes up some of those forces, that means there's going to be less jerkiness inside the motorhome, so your passengers are also going to enjoy a smoother, steadier ride. Before we start our install, we're going to hit our test course and get a baseline of how the motorhome handles. And then once we complete our installation, we're going to re-hit the test course and make a comparison. We're going to start by going into our bump section here, and it's going to be uneven, so it's going to simulate a pothole. And this is really going to affect sway. I do expect there to be some improvements after we install our components. It does got some pretty good sway right now. Even with a small bump, we do rock back and forth pretty good. And this can lead to things like your cabinet doors opening up and stuff falling out in your motorhome. We're now going to head into our slalom section here. And it's definitely got some sway. And as we go back and forth, you really have to muscle the steering wheel the entire time to bring it back and to go the way you want it to. Once we get our steering stabilizer on there, it's going to want to help draw our steering wheel back to center to help straighten us out so we're not doing all the work. Now that we've got our components installed, we're going to hit our test course again. We're going to start with the uneven bump section again. Oh wow, and there's already definitely a noticeable difference. The bounciness is quite a bit reduced. We don't have near the sway that we did before. And our steering wheel is just a little bit easier to maintain control of here. We don't feel it as much as we did before we hit those bumps. And here in our evasive maneuvers, you can feel the steering wheel wanting to bring itself back to center. It does it more than it did before, and it just helps ease maintaining control. So if you have to whip around something real fast, you've got that steering stabilizer there helping guide the wheel along the way to help you bring the motorhome back to a straight track. Our assembly is a gas-filled shock with a spring steel coil spring around it that's going to be protected with a red powder coat finish like you see here. So you don't have to worry about rust, corrosion, or dirt and debris messing your spring up as you go down the road. It's custom fit for your vehicle and comes with all the brackets you'll need to get it installed. There's no drilling required, so why don't you follow along with me, as this is one of the easier upgrades you can do to your motorhome that's really going to make a huge impact on how it feels driving it. We'll begin our installation by parking our vehicle on level ground and ensuring our steering wheel is perfectly straight. It needs to be like this for our steering stabilizer to work properly, to properly return it to center. If the steering wheel is not centered, the stabilizer is going to return it to that position, and that might be off to the left or to the right just a little bit, and we don't want it to cause a pull. Now, when tightening everything down, we want to make sure we're on the ground. We do have ours lifted up with our leveling jacks, and that's for video purposes so we can get some better footage, and it does give a little bit more room. So if you wanted to lift up, you could here for the first few steps, but we are going to be coming back down on the ground before we tighten down our bolts. If you are going to lift up your vehicle, you want to make sure you support it on the frame by jack stands because you don't want to trust just your hydraulic leveling jacks to support the vehicle. We'll start here at our U-bolts. We'll need to remove both the nuts to get our bracket installed. It's going to slide on and our nuts are going to tighten back down. Before you take these off, you want to make sure you've got the appropriate tools to work on this. You'll need a torque wrench that can exceed 300 foot-pounds. If you don't have one, get one before you start. We're then going to use a 1.5-inch socket on our large impact here to remove these. I also highly recommend a large air impact to remove these. If not, you're going to need a very long cheater bar because these are going to be on very tight. I like to go back and forth a little bit when taking these off so we don't deform the U-bolt at all. We can now take our bracket. You're going to have a slotted hole and a large hole as well as a small hole. The small hole is going to go towards the center of the vehicle and also point towards the rear. The slotted and larger hole is going to slip over our U-bolt. Once you've got it slipped on, you can just reinstall your nuts that you had previously removed. Do be careful when touching those nuts, as if you just removed them, they are likely very hot. Once you've got them started, you can go back, tighten them down, and then torque them to the manufacturer's specifications. Now that we've got the bracket installed onto our U-bolt, we can install the bracket onto our tie rod here. You'll get some U-bolts here that come in your kit, these little ones. We're going to be using these to attach our bracket. The bracket's going to sit on the bottom like this, with the small hole here facing towards the front of the vehicle. And our U-bolts are just going to drop down right over the top. Make sure that they go through each hole in your bracket. And then on the bottom, we're just going to loosely secure it with a flat washer and a nylon locking nut. These guys can be a little finicky to hold it all together, so just kind of hold her on there, slide that flat washer on first, and then we're going to start the nut. We'll do the same thing on the other side of our U-bolt here, and then right over on the other side of our bracket you'll have another set of holes for another U-bolt, so we're going to drop another one down and loosely install it as well. This bracket here, we're going to leave loose at this point. If you have your vehicle on the ground, you're able to set things up a little bit faster here, but I kind of like having the extra room to work because we need to slide this down to have the right distance to connect to the bracket that's at a fixed position for each end of our steering stabilizer. So we're going to grab our steering stabilizer now. You'll receive longer hardware that comes in your kit, and this is what we're going to be using to attach our stabilizer to our brackets. So I'm just going to get these opened up here. And we're going to start with the fixed bracket side. So you've got two sides to your steering stabilizer here. You've got the spring side over here, and you've got the shock absorber side over here. We're going to start on this side over here on the shock absorber. It's a little bit easier since this bracket doesn't slide around and move on you. Drop your bolt down through the top of that singular hole. We can then take a flat washer, slide it onto that bolt, and then we can slide our steering stabilizer up onto the bolt. On the other side, we're going to place another flat washer and then follow that up with a locking nut. So you want to make sure you've got a washer on each side of the rubber bushing here. Now that we've got this side attached, we can come down to the other side and start to get this one attached. This one is going to work a little bit backwards. The bolt's going to go up through the bottom. It's going to slide through a flat washer first, and then through our steering stabilizer. So I'm just going to line that up. We can then slide our flat washer on and follow it up with a nut. Now at this point, if you were on the ground and your steering wheel is straight, we can hold it up to where it's level and tighten everything down. Since we're up in the air, and if you were up in the air at home, you want to make sure that we get our vehicle back down on the ground and we're going to get that steering wheel straight. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that point, and we're going to hop back down here and we can start tightening everything up. We're now going to hold our steering stabilizer level, and then we can tighten down our bolts while they're in the right position. And I like to kind of go back and forth with each U-bolt to help take out some slack, just to make it easier to ensure we got it in the right spot. We can then tighten down our larger bolts now. And these bolts, I didn't go crazy, I just got them to where it would hold it to this point. So once we get these tightened down, we'll torque them, and then I like to do the U-bolts, come back and do those last. We'll want to use a 19mm socket and wrench to tighten down our larger bolts. And since we don't have these ones on here crazy tight, I like to just back them up just a little bit to make sure that they are going to be in the correct spot. So we're just a little tiny bit here. And this will ensure our bracket is going to be in that neutral position we're looking for, so our steering wheel returns to the center. And we can just go back and snug them down now. Once we've got these snug down, we can torque the U-bolts as well as our larger bolts to the specifications found in our instructions. With everything tightened and torqued, we're now ready to test drive the vehicle and make sure everything's working properly. After you turn, the steering wheel should pull itself back to the center, and it shouldn't be pulling itself to the left or right. If you do have a pull afterwards, that means that your bracket's just not quite in the appropriate location, that neutral position. All you need to do is just pull your vehicle back on that level ground, turn your steering wheel until it's perfectly straight, then just come back down here, just loosen up those U-bolts a little bit to where it'll slide a little bit, and then just tighten them back down because the spring's going to hold it right where we want it. So once you tighten them down, then just test drive again, and you're just going to recheck. If you have a pull, you still may have your steering wheel left or to the right a little bit. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's steering stabilizer on our 2020 Thor Miramar.